Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 2 of Global Contenders, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of touring cars, be it ITCC cars, DTM cars, and even a V8 supercar from Australia, which we'll get to eventually in the series. But in this particular episode, we're featuring a car which I personally find very interesting. Now, I say that about quite a few cars, but that's because there are quite a few interesting cars, and all in different ways. The reason why I think this particular car is interesting is because it doesn't seem to get much attention. This is unusual to me, because a car like this would usually be a very, very well-followed car, a very popular choice for track-going enthusiasts. Because for racing on Gran Turismo, if you really think about it, the vast majority of people tend to choose very similar cars. You do get people such as myself and many of you guys who like to be different, but the vast majority of people tend to look at what the best car is to use and then just go with that, which is understandable, but kind of boring. And so you do tend to see, especially within touring car and GT car classes, that the same cars tend to be used over and over and over. This, to me, would have been one of the cars which I would have expected that to happen to, because it's kind of cool in a different kind of way. It's got, I don't want to say hipster, but it's got a kind of automotive hipster vibe to it, like it's cool to be different, so I'll use this Lexus because it's cool, it's a premium, and it's potentially the kind of car that a small group of people could think, oh, this is cool, we'll start using it, then more people jump on the bandwagon. But that just doesn't seem to have happened. And that's strange to me. Because this car, considering that it is kind of an unsung hero for the most part on Gran Turismo, has some very, very distinct and very significant advantages to offer a potential buyer. For a start, there's the price. Most of the touring cars of the top level classes, such as DTM, have significant prices, usually around 1 million credits or more. This car is built to roughly DTM specifications. It's not a DTM car, and it never ran in the DTM, but it basically is a DTM car in all things but a couple. So the fact that this car costs 325,000 credits is potentially fantastic value, because that is ridiculously cheap if this thing is as good as it can be. Now, the engine is a 5-litre, and this car actually was the predecessor in effect of the IS-F. It was a car to gauge public reaction to a more higher performance version, and the result was overwhelmingly positive to this concept car. And as a result, we ended up with the IS-F, which is a fantastic super saloon, but we never got the racing version. This car never actually made it into the DTM, and that's a shame. Now, it has a 5-litre engine. As we said, you can tune that engine up to a very respectable 805 horsepower, so it certainly has the horsepower to compete. 583 foot-pounds of torque, which is good enough, and it puts out 596 horsepower per tonne, and has a maximum PP of a pretty much reasonable, what you'd expect, 616. Not as high as some, but certainly high enough to be competitive. The performance as well is exactly what you'd expect from a DTM touring car. The acceleration is strong, the handling is very good, to say the least. There is a huge amount of grip, and it's also surprisingly easy to drive, considering that it's not an official racing machine. But there is a downside or two. The main one is the weight. This car weighs a lot more than any of the other DTM cars. In fact, alongside the Tickford Falcon, it's the heaviest car in the series. It weighs exactly the same as the Tickford Falcon at 1,350 kilos, which is GT3 car territory. Now, that doesn't sound that bad, but many of these DTM cars only weigh around 1,000 kilos, and that's a massive disadvantage to be carrying around. That extra 350 kilos will make a big difference, and to be honest, you can feel that difference in the case of this car. The steering is heavier. It's still very good, it's just not quite as sharp as, say, the Calibra or the CLK or the 155. It can still compete though, don't get me wrong. The second thing that's kind of disappointing is the top speed. The Lexus IS-F road car and also the CCSR Pikes Peak have pretty good top speeds. The Pikes Peak version not so much, but still to some degree it's not bad. The touring car is okay. This car is kind of disappointing. It kind of struggles once you get up around 200. And although you don't need that on most tracks, it is still nice to have that speed when you need it, as we mentioned with the CLK touring car. So that is something to bear in mind. You may want to steer clear of this car on higher speed tracks, but on technical circuits, and especially long sweeping circuits, it's still a very competitive choice to go for. It's also a full premium and has one of the only seating positions in the game which is actually like a real DTM car. DTM cars, for any who are unfamiliar, actually have seats that are quite far back in the cockpit. You're almost sitting essentially in the centre of the car. It feels almost like a prototype. You can feel that in this car, and it's very unique. You also sit very low down in the car. So overall, if you are looking for a touring car which pretty much no one uses for the most part, and that's also paintable, definitely check this car out. It has an absolutely incredible price, and it's definitely competitive, even though it's not an official machine. So that's it for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.